Thinking about self-publishing and don't know where to start? Join the Spa Girls each week for 30 or 40 minutes of honest advice, tips, and resources. I'm Trudy J, and I am here with Cheryl Phipps.
Hi there.
Wendy Vella.
Hello.
And Shah Barrett.
Hi there.
And this week we have an awesome guest. We've got Linda Pucci.
Yeah.
Is that how you say your surname?
Welcome.
I just realized that maybe that's not how you say it.
It's supposed to be Pucci.
Yeah. How do you say it?
However, my husband's family apparently wanted to be English.
Oh.
And so they pronounce it Pucci, but it's really it's Italian. It's Italian. So
yeah,
it's supposed to be Pucci. So
okay. All right. I'm just not going to refer to your surname for the rest of the interview.
Now she's intimidated now.
We don't want to get in trouble with the in-laws. We really don't.
No,
so,
no,
you know.
They're both gone. So the coast is good.
We're so okay. We're all okay. All right. So Linda, Shah is going to read your bio so everyone knows who you are and where you're coming from. But this week we're talking about limiting beliefs and specifically limiting beliefs that authors might have about themselves and that we can kind of hopefully break through and help them charge forth in their careers. So, but first, Shah, you can.
Cool. So I'm going to go with the Italian pronunciation. So Linda Pucci is a retired psychologist who has turned into a romance novelist under a separate pen name. After working with people in therapy for 35 years and coaching for 20, she realized the key to building lasting relationships and being happy involves letting go of emotional baggage, something her fiction demonstrates through character arcs. But today, Linda is here to talk about how we as creatives can overcome our limiting fears, limiting beliefs, our fears of success, failure, imposter syndrome, all of the above. And
all those good things, yes.
Yeah, all those good things. I think we can just go tick, 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 tick down the list on this one, and how we can stop, most importantly, being our own worst enemy.
Yes.
Awesome. So welcome, Linda.
Thank you.
First of all, I just wanted you to give a little bit of a background. I'm just kind of curious about your journey into self-publishing, like how you decided to leave your current or your old profession of being a psychologist and turn to romance writing, because that sounds awesome.
Well, I was thinking about one of the things that always frustrated me about being a therapist was how long everything takes. And I started looking around for ways to help people move through things more quickly so that we didn't all have to grow old together. And I got interested in writing romance novels as a way to help my clients and help people in general move beyond the things that limit them and get that happy ever after that I always wanted them to have, but they didn't always follow my advice.
Funny that how people don't always follow your
Isn't
advice.
it?
Damn it.
So I decided to start writing romance novels, thinking about what would I do in retirement. And then the more I did it, the more I realized that I really wanted more time to write. And so I decided to retire my psychology license and just continue doing coaching and continue writing. So that's what I've done.
That is cool. That is a cool journey. Love it.
Very cool.
So let's talk a little bit about beliefs and particularly these limiting beliefs. So how would you define them? What are they and how are they formed? Like, how do we get them there?
I often tell people that the key to success is between your ears. It's in your brain and how you think about yourself, your writing, if you're talking about authors, and success. And it has to do with mindset. And mindset really consists of your attitudes, beliefs, and negative emotions that haunt you. And so those might be things like fear or self-doubt or frustration or anxiety and so on. It's also the self-talk that you do. So, you know, that little voice in the back of your head that's saying, you know, I really can't do this. Or what if it doesn't work? Or I don't know enough, or I'm too old, or I'm too young, or I don't understand Amazon's algorithm, or I don't have enough time, or I'm not good enough to be a successful author. And so those are the kinds of beliefs that I think of as limiting beliefs as opposed to empowering beliefs. So an empowering belief might be something like, I can, or I haven't figured it out yet. So that you're leaving the door open for success and the things that you need to know in order to be able to move forward. And the thing about beliefs is that they can be really, they're probably the most insidious way that we sabotage ourselves.
Yep.
And that has to do with how beliefs work. So when we form a belief, we tend to do whatever is necessary to prove that that belief is true. And this is true of all of us, and it's true of all beliefs. But once you decide to form a belief, you are going to do one of three things, or maybe all of the above. You may ignore evidence to the contrary. You may distort evidence to make it true. Or you may overgeneralize to make it always true or never true. And that's true of all beliefs and of all of us. So while a belief may start out as true, it often doesn't stay that way. But instead of recognizing that the belief isn't true, we're busy trying to make it true. And so it stays with us time after time after time. So let me give you an example. A lot of us may have had the experience when we were in elementary school or being about 9 or 10, and somebody threw a birthday party and didn't invite us. And if you had that as an experience, which is a pretty common one, actually, you may have formed the belief that I'm not good enough to hang out with the popular kids. And that may have been true at the time. But unfortunately, what happens is then you're busy trying to prove that's true. And you don't ever weigh evidence to the contrary. And you don't recognize the times when you have been accepted by others and you have been perfectly good enough. And so you carry with you that limiting belief that I'm not good enough, or I'm not, or people don't like me, or I can't compete with the popular kids, whatever the belief is. And as time passes, what happens is that belief tends to go unconscious. So if I were to ask any of you, do you believe that do you think that you're not good enough? Your conscious mind might say, well, I'm probably as good as anybody else. But unconsciously, that part that formed that belief at 9 or 10 is still operating. And so it's chugging along like a bad computer virus below the surface, messing up your best of intentions. And the problem is that you can't consciously decide, okay, I'm not going to believe that anymore. You can do that, but most likely it's not going to work because the belief itself has gone underground. And the only way that you can get rid of an unconscious belief is to get rid of it unconsciously.
Okay. I'm writing that down.
I really like the idea that when you say the belief has gone underground, that's an awesome way to say it. It's kind of like taking into our subconscious.
It's gone into your unconscious. And so you're not thinking about it daily, but it's still with you, bringing all that charming stuff that it brings along that sabotages your best goals and your best of intentions.
It would affect your decision making on so many levels, wouldn't it, really?
Exactly, exactly. And all of us have a ton of limiting beliefs. But the good news is that authors have a heads up. So let me talk a little bit, if I can, about steps for getting rid of limiting beliefs.
Yes, please.
So
Yes.
would that be helpful? Okay. So the first step is to identify what's standing in your way. So how do you do that? It's unconscious. So it's not hovering there, in your mind. So to uncover it, what you do is ask yourself questions. Because when we ask ourselves questions, our unconscious mind or our subconscious tries to find an answer. So it's really important that you ask good questions. So the question that you don't want to be asking yourself, why am I such a loser? Because your subconscious mind is going to come up with some explanation, and I can promise you, you won't like it.
No, it'll go right back to when you're 9.
Exactly.
And how come you weren't a cool kid?
Yes. So what you can keeping me stuck, or what's getting in my way of writing a best-selling novel, or what's getting in the way of my publishing, or what's getting in my way of any other kinds of thing that you're trying to uncover, or how do I sabotage myself, or is there a pattern to my self-sabotage? All those things sort of open the door for your unconscious mind to reveal itself and give you some answers.
And do you just keep asking those questions over and over until you get the answer?
Until something pops up. And the way I usually identify that it's coming from your subconscious is that it's not something you would imagine with your conscious mind. So it's that sensation that you have that something sort of pops into your head.
Yeah.
And it's maybe a little wacky and not something that you would have thought of, or not something that somebody else would have said, well, your problem is blah, blah, blah. So you need to identify them and pay attention to what's popping into your head when you ask questions, and write it down and listen to the words, because it's really important that it's in your words. Because we store things in our brain, including limiting beliefs, in our own words, even if they might have started out as somebody else's. And I sometimes have the experience with people is they'll tell me a limiting belief and I'll go, it strikes me, that's not really something somebody would say to themselves. And so I sometimes ask them, whose voice is that? And usually they go, oh, well, that's my mother's, or that's my father's, or that's my grandfather, or that's, my piano teacher, or, somebody that has sort of planted in their head that they're lazy, or they can't do something that they have never even tried. So pay attention to the words it comes out in. And don't let anybody, if you're working with somebody to get rid of limiting beliefs, don't let them plant a belief in your head, because it's yours that matter. And you can get rid of them little by little. Some of them are small beliefs and some of them are huge beliefs. And so when I work with people, I usually get them to tell me all the beliefs they can think of, or as we're talking, we uncover them. but I'm looking for the big one because if I can get that big one out of the way, everything else drops out.
Mm.
And so it's a way of making sure that we don't all grow old together.
Yeah.
Which wasn't a problem for me in my 20s, but boy, the older I get, the more I'm aware of it.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because I was going to say maybe you chip away at the smaller beliefs first and then tackle the big one, but that's, that's interesting.
I mean, and that's a perfectly legitimate way to do it. I just often go for the biggest, and I will ask somebody, okay, let me read these beliefs to you. Which one is your biggest? And they can usually identify maybe the top 3 biggest, and that's what we work on.
I can imagine that those top ones would be different for just about everybody. But what about all these small ones? Do you think it's something that most of us would carry with us? Like maybe somebody saying that you're not good enough for some specific thing, and you carrying that with you? Is that
Sure?
be right?
Sure. But what ends up happening is you often generalize that belief, and make it bigger. So I find that I'm not good enough tends to be the mother of all limiting beliefs. In my experience, a lot of people hold that, and it really messes people up.
Yeah.
I imagine that being the case.
And so once you identify what your beliefs are and you got them in your own words, then you can work on them. And what I tend to do when I work on things with people is I use a lot of techniques from different areas. So I've been trained in neurolinguistic programming. So I use NLP and a technique, including a technique called timeline therapy, which helps people let go of stuff from the past. Sorry.
It's okay.
I'll also use guided imagery or experiential therapies, like I do equine assisted learning. So I partner with horses to teach people. I use it with corporate training or youth groups or personal development to help people learn from their experience with the horses.
Very cool.
I'll also do hypnotherapy or art therapy or narrative therapy. And so you may be wondering, okay, that's a lot of different ways. What do they all have in common? They all have in common that they use symbols and metaphors to represent not only the problem or the limiting belief, but also the solution. So this should give all the authors among us some positive hope, because as authors, we have the wherewithal to change our limiting beliefs, because as an author, you know how to use metaphors and symbols.
I like it.
So you can, for example, write a scene or two with a main character who's facing a limiting belief just like yours, and write it all out. Describe it in great detail. So what triggers the belief? Where did it come from? If you know, or if your main character knows, how does it show up for them? And how does it affect him or her? And then write a sentence. After you've gotten all that spelled out, write the sentence that says, and everything changed when, and write how things changed and what changed them. And have it come from your unconscious creative mind.
Wow,
I love that.
That
makes
sense, doesn't it?
It totally makes sense, because you're getting out of you're taking it away from you, you're depersonalizing it, but you're still tapping into that subconscious, that guidance or whatever, whatever it is. I love that.
And I had a coach one time who asked me the most powerful question that anybody's ever asked me. And the question, I was feeling really stuck. And she said to me, what would you do if one of your clients came to you with this issue? And I went, oh, I know what to do about that.
Yeah.
And it completely made a plan for how I could get unstuck.
Wow. So that's awesome. So we use our
what we do,
our characters and what we do to kind of figure out how to make a plan. So is it an idea when you say, and everything changed when, is that kind of, that's where you're trying to make a plan for what you could do, or is it just how?
Yeah, it's a way of, that's a sentence I learned when I took a workshop on narrative therapy. And basically it's indicating that whatever came before now is going to change. And so you're pulling from your unconscious what that shift is going to be. And so whatever it is that, again, pops up will help you figure out what possible solutions there might be for that main character that is you and your character arc.
Because we do that every day, don't we? When we're writing, doesn't matter whether it's romance or fantasy or whatever, we're always looking for solutions, aren't we? And when we find
exactly
to make our ending the way we want it to be. So
exactly,
that blows my mind.
Well, and in novels, we sometimes use secondary characters to talk with our hero or heroine and give advice. Or so think about when if you're writing fiction, what do you use with your characters to help them with their character arc? What sort of solutions do you use? And who and how could you use something similar to resolve your own character arc?
That's nice.
So if you were writing a book about a novelist who isn't having the success that she wants, you might look at how, problem solving for your character and come up with some ideas in the meantime.
And that pretty much sorts out all of our listeners.
There you go.
And we're done. So how often, how often would you do this like writing the scene? Like, do you just do it once and then or do you
whenever it pops up, whatever the belief is that is in your way. And a lot of us experience it as being stuck. And just like our characters get stuck because they have something they need to resolve, because of their background, they don't trust or whatever, then you figure out how you're going to help them. And you can do it as often as it comes up. There's another technique I can teach you if you're interested.
Yes, please.
So this one is a sort of a guided imagery. And so I'm just going to kind of go through this. So I'd like the four of you to think about a belief or behavior you need to change to become more successful as an author. And you don't have to tell me what it is. Just make sure that you're clear about it. And let me know if everybody's got one. Okay.
Weirdly, they're all top of mind.
You should know. Yeah.
How about that?
And so you can have your eyes open or closed for this, whichever makes you more comfortable. And those of you who are listening to the podcast, I'd like you to go ahead and do this along with us.
Just don't close your eyes if you're listening in the car.
Exactly.
Or walking.
Or walking.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
So what I'd like you to do is imagine yourself being out in the future. So I'd like you to go out to a time in the future when you're an old, wise woman, or if you're male, an old, wise man. And you're looking back on your life. And I want you to especially remember the things that began to shift for you back in 2021. And so as an old wise woman or an old wise man, I'd like you to remember what it was that really began to change. And as you remember the things that happened in 2021 that really created a positive shift for you, you can remember what it was that created that shift and whether it was a small thing or a big thing. Maybe it was a big aha, or maybe it was something more subtle. And you can remember it now as an old wise woman looking back on 2021 and what that was that began to create a shift for you. Can you not? And as I cough, just go ahead and keep remembering what it was that shifted for you. And once you've remembered in a way that you know as an old wise woman or an old wise man, that it was this particular thing that created a shift for you. Once you know what it was, I'd like you to give me a little nod to let me know that you remember what it was and what caused important things to begin to shift. And if you haven't remembered that thing quite yet, continue to remember. And these are for the people on the podcast listening or watching. And continue to remember the things that you most need to remember to allow yourself to overcome whatever it was that got in your way back in 2021. And once you have that knowledge about what caused you to shift in positive ways, I'd like you as an old wise woman or an old wise man to create a symbol, something to always remind you of the shift that took place back in 2021. And that symbol can be an object or a thing, a song, a word, a color, a book, or anything that immediately reminds you of that positive shift. The positive shift that happened in 2021. And I'd like you to each find a little slip of paper and write down your symbol so that you can always remember the shift. And when you've done that, I'd like you to come back to now and come on back in the room. So how was that?
Great.
It was awesome. You have a very soothing voice.
You do.
When I'm not coughing.
Yeah, well.
Love allergy season.
Yeah.
So would anybody like to share what their symbol was and what you remembered that caused things to shift for you?
Oh, me.
Now, we're not surprised.
Tell us.
Okay, so I had mountains with stars overhead of them, and my one was because I was like, oh, be more organized and get me more onto things or whatever, and then the first thing that came to me when you were talking was actually slow down to speed up and stop trying to do everything at once and then nothing gets achieved. So it was the idea of kind of just calming down.
And so you know for sure that came from your unconscious mind, because your conscious mind was busy saying speed up and get organized and do everything.
Yeah.
And your unconscious mind knew that that multitasking was not going to be a good solution.
Yeah. So that was good. And
interesting. Some symbology, how is that how you say it? I don't know. It's an interesting symbol with the mountains and the stars.
Yeah, I think it's just because that's where I just was, and we just realized that I love the mountains and that environment, and it's that whole adventure thing that I've had going on this year, and that's all part of that slowing down to speed up, I guess.
To speed up. Yeah.
So,
and I would guess that the mountains are a great symbol for you.
Yeah.
And mountains are great symbols for accomplishing goals. The stars are often about dreams. So yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. I love that.
It's
I
cool.
was like, super into that one.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Come on. Anyone else going to share with me? No one else is sharing.
Well, I had a gold star. I had a gold star because I don't really do a lot of stuff like that for myself. But I have some yellow paper, and I knew that I wanted a star. And as soon as I saw the yellow paper, I thought, yeah, it'll be a gold star, because
Nice.
I do like to learn, and I realise that I haven't been doing as much of that as I should be. And in particular, advertising, I go on about this a lot because I really do try, but I think that's a story that I tell myself, that I try hard enough, and I actually don't.
And so just so you know, the word try linguistically means you're going to put a lot of effort in it, but it's not going to happen. So when somebody tells you, they'll try to have lunch with you this week, you're not having lunch with them.
You know, when you were talking earlier,
that's such a good thing. I've never, but that's wow. Okay.
Try just means you're going to really look like you're working hard at it.
Oh, I love that.
All through this one, we've been talking about being stuck. The very first sentence that I wrote as you started to talk was do advertising courses, as many as I can, because I have done them. I know that I've tried to do them, and I haven't actually
just done them.
Yeah, just done
so
them.
What would be something that you could carry into the idea of advertising that would really light your fire, that would really excite you and make you come alive?
I think for me, it has to be success. It has to be success with just one. And if I had it with one, I know that it would carry me through. I know that it's like in my soul, really. It's
good. Okay, perfect. Yeah. So you know that if you can make it happen once,
yes,
you can replicate it.
Yes.
It's that rinse and repeat that people who do marketing always tell you, find a successful strategy and then rinse and repeat.
I've been rinsing and repeating the old strategies that haven't been
working. Yeah, because maybe there may be a limiting belief in there for you. About
no doubt.
I'm just saying that because
sure.
I can relate to it. So I'd rather do this thing that doesn't work but is familiar. This is my default of advertising, rather than have to go outside my comfort zone and do something that I'm totally uncomfortable doing.
And also by doing it that way, I know that it's not going to take me very long to do. Kind of crazy, isn't it, when you say it out loud?
We're often our own worst enemy. We often get in our own way.
We have all these little stories that we tell ourselves, like I can't do that because, and time's a big one, I think, for me, and just from what Cheryl's saying, it's like you feel like you don't have the time to sit down and do the lessons, but actually by not doing that, it's you can't spinning in this time. Like you're spinning in the same place, so you may like it's a it's a circle of
opening up and learning new is tough too, because you've got a lot of old to still do, like I think that is a real thing, because it takes time, doesn't it? Whereas the old stuff, so you can just do it.
You can do it automatically. It's a default.
The
new stuff feels awkward and uncomfortable, and you don't feel proficient at it, so it doesn't come easy because you're still learning how to do it.
And it's mindset too, isn't it? You go into it with I'm going to try.
I'm
going to fail, aren't you?
But it's
watch me try.
I will try.
And actually, there's a lot of sorry,
I was just going to say, it ties into it goes full circle though. It goes into that child at school, the 9-year-old that maybe didn't fit in, or that it's that new school feeling or that outsider feeling. Is very similar to, when you start a new job or whatever, you've got that you go right back to that 9-year-old because you don't know where the toilets are and you're worried about so-and-so and they look like really popular.
And you curl up tight in on yourself.
But it's the same when you learn new things, because you go right back to that state of being, it's very easy to slip back into that state, I should say. Yeah.
And so part of it may be giving yourself credit for the changes that you've made, the learning that you've done. So probably the first thing you ever wrote, whether it was a short story or a book or a novel or a poem, whatever it was, probably didn't. I know the first romance novel that I wrote, I discovered how much harder it is writing fiction and writing romance novels than it is writing nonfiction self-help books. Oh my gosh. Because I'd done that, but I think I must have revised that first manuscript. Oh my gosh. I lost count how many times.
I hear you.
Before I even sent it to an editor. I just kept rewriting and rewriting and rewriting. But now I don't rewrite as often. Do I still rewrite, or do I still write stuff and then go, that really isn't working? I need to try something different. Something different. How it is. Yeah. So give yourself credit for what you've learned, and probably the things you've learned have helped you be more successful at it now than you were the very first time you put pen to paper or
fingers to computers. That's a big one.
I learned on a dot matrix printer, so
that is a big one though, like kind of noticing how far you've come. Otherwise you kind of still keep yourself in this, I'm still not good enough, I'm still not good enough. I'm not good enough. And boy, then when we look at, am I good enough to be a best-selling author? Oh my gosh, there's a ton of stuff all wrapped up in that one. You've got the I'm not good enough stuff, and then you've got this higher plane of other people judging your work and making it make sense to Amazon's algorithm. I mean, really.
Get it.
So what do you think are the most common fears for writers, Linda? Have you seen a commonality? Is it the not good enough, or is it the judgment?
I'm not good enough is probably the big one. There probably is a fear of failure. And our minds are so adept at figuring out what if, you know, what if I'm not good enough? What if I write a book and nobody buys it? What if I spend all this time doing this and nobody likes what I've written? Or what if my writing isn't good enough?
It's a never-ending game there.
It's a never, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you have to be able to cut yourself some slack and recognize that those beliefs are going to keep you stuck and trying and trying and trying and not feeling like you're getting anywhere because you're trying and trying and trying.
Yeah.
So hard.
Gosh. Yeah.
And then you get exhausted, and then you're saying, oh, I don't know, have enough years left to become successful at this.
Yeah. It is. It's exhausting. It's mentally draining thinking
It is. It is.
And I think as you get older too, that does play on your mind, doesn't it? That, well, I'm this age now, you know, when does it all fall into place? And I'm not sure that there's ever a right time for any person. It's just when it happens, right?
It's when it happens. And so much of it seems to be luck or opportunity. I mean, if you look at J.K. Rowling's and how many rejections she had on the Harry Potter books. Anytime you do something, you need to really think about and not give failure too much power. And so what I always do is I think about whenever I start getting into that failure loop, I remember the guy whose name I can't remember, of course, but the guy who was trying to create an adhesive that would really, really stick. And instead, he invented Post-it notes.
That's right. It's right. It was the engineer from 3M, wasn't it? And
yes.
Yeah, that's also
Thomas Edison was another one, wasn't he?
Yeah, like 1,000.
Yeah. And wouldn't you love to have those patents?
Yes.
For sure.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
also acknowledging successes, no matter how small and big, is something we don't do enough of, because we just want the next step, and then
we want the big.
We just want to keep going, don't we?
Fame and fortune and bestseller and.
But even sometimes we change our goalposts on ourselves.
Yes.
Like, so we say, I'll be happy when I get to this level. And then you get to this level and you go, oh, actually, not so happy here anymore. I want more, you know, and then you're. And
so that often has to do with your values. So what we value are the things that are most important to us. And so if you ever want to figure out what your values are, ask yourself the question, what's the most important thing to me about writing? And because this is context dependent. So if it's about career or about writing or about my family or whatever, what's important to me? And then just start brainstorming and writing them all down. And then when you're done, rank order them. And then once you've ranked ordered them, draw a line under number 5.
Interesting.
Why? Because in reality, we only operate on our top 5 values. And so if making money or being successful or, you know, being a best-selling author is not one of your top 5, you're not going to get around to it. So think about what it is that's really important to you and focus on that.
That's because in many ways, not only are you assuming other people's beliefs, you're also assuming other people's values too. Like,
right.
I have to earn a certain amount or whatever, and it may not be, but that might be number 7 on your list.
Well, and I had to figure this out the hard way, but my top value is growth. And growth and change. They kind of interact with each other. So, but what that means is because that's number 1 or number 1 and number 2, I'm never satisfied. And so I'm always looking to change. And I had to kind of realize that and go, oh, no wonder I feel so dissatisfied, because I'm really all about change. And I'm really all about growing. And that means I'm not going to be happy at any particular level. Because so it's always got to change.
What makes you happy then? It's just the process of change. So
the process of change. Yeah.
So you have to kind of acknowledge that and kind of go, change is where I.
Yeah. And so for me, I've ended up reinventing myself many times. And I think about it as starting a new chapter. So when I got out of grad school to become a psychologist, I'm thinking to myself, if I last 5 years in this, I'll be surprised, because this is heavy duty stuff and really demanding and not much fun, actually. And so I actually stayed in it for probably close to 35 years.
Wow.
And how? Because I kept reinventing myself. So when I would start to get bored, I would go take some new class or workshop or do a training or decide, oh, I'm going to add horses to my practice.
Suddenly that list of all the different types of therapies makes a lot more sense.
I love that. I relate so much to that.
And I guess you had the opportunity to put those in.
Yeah, and I've done all those therapies. Can I just say, I love it. It's like,
of course you have.
Everything except for the horse, everything. But the timeline, the NLP, hypnotherapy, it's like a massage for my brain. I just absolutely love it, and highly recommend it to anybody that's like me.
Well, for me in my practice, it really changed things so that I could no longer practice doing traditional psychotherapy, because I couldn't ethically take 10 years to help people resolve something that I knew that I could help them resolve in an hour.
Another way.
Wow. It's I totally understand that. I had an experience, and I'm not going to get into it because it's not about my own personal therapy, but it was a timeline thing, and it felt like 30 years had just shifted in an hour. I've never ever experienced that before. It was just incredible.
And when I've used that technique, I've talked to people about, okay, we just did about 10 years of therapy. And what happened to that feeling of depression, or what happened to all those traumatic memories, they're gone.
That's incredible. But the thing is, I think the fact that you're talking about the guided imagery, it's stuff that we can actually apply for ourselves. We can do self-therapy, can't we?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think as authors, we kind of have a little bit of an advantage over other people, because we've got these huge imaginations that we can be hopefully using to help ourselves kind of imagine a different
story. Because usually fiction anyway is about metaphor. And even nonfiction is often about metaphor.
Yeah.
Do you recommend the morning pages? That's something that, particularly probably 20 years ago, Julia Cameron's,
Artist's Way or something.
Artist's Way, yeah. And I found that didn't work for me because it kept me stuck, because I was writing the same thing and it was almost like reinforcing those beliefs every day. It had the opposite effect on getting rid of it, which just did not. I just wondered if what other techniques you recommend or not recommend.
So sometimes journaling is not a great way, because I know for myself, as I go back and look at journals I wrote, it's like, oh my gosh. Because I usually would write when I was bummed out and feeling sad or miserable or angry. When I was feeling happy and joyful, I was out enjoying life. Sitting in my room writing about how joyful I feel. Although I have gone to some workshops where they had the subject, the workshop session was on play. And usually I cut out during that and went and played so that I wasn't going to hear about play and enjoying myself. I was going to actually do it. And so I would say really look for if you're getting stuck. So if you're doing some technique to try to help you move on or get unstuck, is it working? And ask your unconscious mind, is this working for me? And then what I would suggest is go to something that's a little more abstract. So go to art therapy. So get beyond, get beyond words and get into images.
So do you just draw things when you're doing art therapy, or is there something more specific? No.
So you may start with a question or an issue. So it might be draw what's keeping me stuck. And your unconscious mind will pick the colors. And I recommend that you use either markers or chalk or crayons, those little oil, because, or even crayons, because you can't get focused on the job that you're doing with those less structured methods.
Got it.
Like you would if you were doing, a pen and pencil or a pencil drawing. You'd be worried about, oh my gosh, my perspective is all off and my proportions,
shading there.
And then once you're done with the picture, just ask your unconscious mind to provide you with a word about the picture, and then write the word on the picture. And that again opens the door to symbols. And you can also, I've also done this writing or this drawing one as 3 different pictures. Number 1 is the picture of your problem or your challenge or your limiting belief. Number 2 is what your problem would look like if it were all better. And number 3 is what will help turn picture number 1 into picture number 2.
Interesting.
And so again, you're giving permission to yourself to come up with something that you can't judge yourself on. Because we're all so self-critical. And we're our own worst critic.
Yeah,
so what will turn picture number 1 into picture number 2?
Love it.
That's awesome.
I want to do an art therapy session.
We have to come back another time.
Oh,
We can all sit here and draw.
Such great fun. Yeah, it's such great fun.
I love that.
I love drawing, so I'm right into this whole
I can't
art
draw,
therapy.
so I'm not going to say I'm going to try.
You will do it, Wendy. You will do it, and you'll
just do it.
It's not my superpower. There's no way that to be honest.
Well, and it's not mine either. And so, I mean, I don't draw or color for other people's judgment or their amusement. Actually, I do it to express myself and allow stuff to come pouring out.
Yeah, it's amazing. It seems like a great way to access that subconscious mind, right? And that's what we're doing. We're getting into we're getting the stuff that's gone underground and trying to bring it back up into
we're burrowing deep to find what we
and because we're authors
originally, sometimes
maybe using words can be a trap for us because we depend so heavily on words. And so use a different modality. Use clay. Use Play-Doh or clay or
I love Play-Doh.
Sand castles, sand structures.
These are awesome ideas. Because do you find, like, I think with limiting beliefs, sometimes people you believe it's fact, right? Like you don't go, I think maybe I might not be good enough. You go like, no, I'm not good enough. Like I know I'm not good enough. Yeah. Like and I'm not going to try not being good enough. I'm like, no. So got that down pat. So when you're trying all these other therapies, this is just about kind of tapping away at that kind of belief and And
also, since you mentioned tapping, I haven't been trained in it, but there are some tapping techniques.
Emotional freedom technique. Highly recommend.
Yes. Emotional freedom technique, I recommend. Thought field therapy is another more structured way of tapping.
And there's some really good one. There's actually an EFT therapist actually on YouTube that specializes in writers, and she's really how perfect. So you do everything that you've talked about today, but if you're like, for example, even just to kind of recover from it, because it can be quite, when you're digging in there to get the underground stuff out, it can be quite and not upsetting, but it can just make you feel
a bit raw.
A bit raw and a bit sort of unsettled,
tired.
It's tiring.
Draining,
So highly recommend the tapping. Highly recommend the tapping.
I do that anyway, so that's okay.
You just do it nervous tapping.
I spend it all day doing that, so I'm something else is done.
So we're rolling up into the end of the interview now, Linda. But I just like to ask you: is there one kind of last piece of advice or something you can give our readers just to take away with them? Something that you can recommend, or
our listeners too.
Yeah. Oh, what did I say?
Readers.
Readers and listeners, readers and writers. Yeah. So listen to that wise part of you. And pay attention to what your unconscious mind is trying to tell you. And just let it flow.
Let it flow.
And sometimes it will happen overnight, and sometimes it will take longer. And what I'm really curious about from all of you and from your listeners is what shift in 2021 you will have experienced as we move into 2022.
That's awesome.
And so if you want to share that with me, you can get a hold of me at Linda at Inner, INNER, resource, RESOURCE, center, CENTER.com. which is my email address. Or if you can't remember that, you can do Cassidy at CassidyWells.com, which is my pen name.
Okay.
But don't tell anybody.
Anyone, we won't tell.
We'll put those links in our show notes anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you so
All right.
much.
Well, thank you so much, Linda. This has been an awesome
This was
episode.
Great fun.
I feel like I
Thank
need to
you.
lie down and drink some coffee or something.
Take a break.
Not coffee, water.
No. Chamomile
and
tea,
just
chamomile
water.
tea.
Enjoy the day and enjoy the life you're creating for yourselves.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Linda.
that's
Love
awesome.
that.
Thank you so much.
A lovely
It was
note.
awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much. Yeah. So, Shah, where can we be found?
Yeah, so share with us as well at spargirlspodcast.com and know that none of us are trained licensed therapists like Linda.
That's true. That is true.
Share with Linda.
Yeah.
We're learning too.
Yeah, it's been awesome. So
Thank you.
thank you everyone for listening to another episode of the Spa Girls podcast. We'll be back again next week, but in the meantime, farewell.
Keep
Bye.
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 Bye.